So going into following up from our previous slide. So the previous slide, we were really talking about Photoshop, kind of a little about Google Ads, but really like the fundamentals of PLG. PLG for me really is we want to encompass all different layers of your company. So product support onboarding, right? Your product team. But the best companies treat PLG as a marketing cost. So it's not just I slap up my website, my product seems easy, there's 3 clicks and you're ready to go. Well, when you look at the support and the marketing companies that come into PLG, here's some great examples of that. So like Airtable, huge amounts of templates and guides that you have to go through. Miro, Photoshop, Webflow, like Webflow they actually teach you HTML because, it's complicated for some people or maybe complicated for most. But there's a lot of first-time users that have no technical knowledge how to use Webflow, but they actually have a university teach you HTML for free. Superhuman is probably the one that a lot of us know about, which really comes down to everyone's talking what a great PLG strategy Superhuman had. Superhuman was an email product. But what happened was you have to actually sign up and do a demo one-on-one with somebody and actually get vetted before you can actually even use the product. So that was really interesting. And then Shopify and Stripe, they have a huge amounts of, again, checklists and sequences you have to go through. And Stripe has a lot of deep documentation. So all PLG products, everyone and anybody knows all of these companies, but there's a lot of motivation that goes between these companies as opposed to a company where you can kind of get that aha moment within 5 minutes. You sign up and you're already ready and using it. So we definitely want to kind of like look back at like the BMAT formula and figure out like, where's your motivation, your ability, your triggers, where does that come within the product and how you use that through that onboarding from beginning to end. It never stops. So if you're building complex products, flexibility is really important. So as we talked about, you want to experiment with activation methods, if it's templates, if it's universities. One of the biggest things I see is these user onboarding where everyone comes on and have to go through the same process. You're giving one option to everybody, and that's not the best way to do it. Remember, 100% of your customers, 100% of your users, 100% of your trial customers all go through the same process. They all have to go through the website. They all have to activate. They all have to sign up. They all see the same thing. They all go through the same. So remember, when it comes to triggers, how do you know when to trigger a certain user most likely based on actions, when they dropped off, when they haven't dropped off? So it's a great formula, and it's easy for people to really think about as they're building out a PLG. It's a simple, just kind of framework for everybody. And then for me, coming from a sales background, when to layer in sales into PLG. So for me, sales is really about how you supplement and support your PLG strategy. So it's like more around like the experience of it. To give you an example, Shopify has, it's not so much on the sales side, but they have a VP of education just for product onboarding. One person, a team, just for product onboarding on Shopify. So that really correlates when it comes to sales, because if you have a bottom up or a top down approach, so fast adoption, bottom up is users invite other users. And for larger deals, a top down would be really much around sales, targets, decision makers. So for you in sales, I layer in PLG with sales team is once I get that first or second user, once I identify a certain size of a company, how do you get that company from 1 user, 2 users to 20 to 50 to 100 users? And it's about those identifying. So it's really about supplementing sales. And we can have a 3-hour conversation on that alone when we layer in sales into PLG. And then the biggest one is treat your product education as a marketing cost, not a support cost, because, your users are, in that product all the time. You want to be making sure you hit them up with as much content as possible. And support's not there to create content. Marketing is great at creating content. So, marketing, sales, support all should be in one. But again, that's another debate for another time of getting all those decision makers, aligned. But I think that's almost the end of our presentation. And then the key takeaway, it really depends on the complexity of your product. So I'll leave everyone with, like, for a user to take an action, they must have motivation. It must be easy enough to do. And if that's the case, you can really layer on your triggers, and then it's just like rinse and repeat. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, very, very easy on the B2C side, because they know when you go on YouTube, it's like, here's relevant other content that you probably like. Here's something that you missed. Here's something you only watched half an hour of. They just keep bringing you back in. It's a lot more complex in B2B, but this is a never-ending cycle. It's always about learning and kind of adapting to your customer. Number one thing that most people don't do in PLG, talk to your customers. If you're in marketing, never mind in sales, but if you're in marketing and you're in product, talk to your customers. Ask them questions. I think that's where it starts and ends, always.
I feel like we definitely could have done a 3-hour one on this topic, so it's hard to condense it into a short period of time here. I think just one other takeaway, interesting, hearing that motivation piece, which is a huge factor of why people are signing up, and talking to the customer can get that, but also through in-app questionnaires or prompts or like fields that you collect on sign up or in the app. Like, how do you better understand the motivation? Because that is a big determinant of how fast someone's willing to go, or their level of experience or timeline.
Yeah, it is. Motivation is really hard. So let's face it. Let's be all honest with each other. If your product's not good, people aren't going to be motivated. If there's no need for your product, they're not going to want to use it, right? It goes back to like your total addressable market and who your competitors are and all these other things. But let's just move that out of the table. On the motivation side, you really want to make sure that it's really hard to answer, obviously. But like, let's take Shopify and Webflow for an example. Okay. It's core part of someone's job. You want to make it easy for them, because motivation is tough. You want to make it easy for them to use your product, not just use your product on a daily basis, but the supplemental factors of using your product. Like, you make it really easy for them to just like take a 45-minute university program on your website, and it's a tutorial, and they walk through it and they're like, wow, I know how to use this product. A couple of little checklists, quick onboarding questions of like, it's the right user. Motivation is really hard when you're selling it to the wrong user as well. So like, really understanding the user, but making it really easy for these fixed paths, so they know that they have to, like, these are the trigger points that they want to complete. So you bring in triggers back on top of help them with the motivation. So not the easiest answer, but it's hard to answer really quick. Actually, I had like a 30 slide presentation before you guys handed me the four slide pitch deck. So I could have went to it a little bit deeper, but motivation, you definitely want to make sure that again, you set those triggers for those users to make it easy for them to onboard.
And Lee,
marketing is very key for that.
Heather did ask, what does HLC stand for? If you could hint that.
Oh, sorry. High learning curve products, and then there's low learning curve products. Yep. So a high learning curve product is like a Shopify. A low learning curve product is, maybe Stripe, for an example, even though they have a lot of documentation, but maybe Stripe's a little low learning curve product.